Here we go. The weather's warmer. That can only mean playoff hockey and also means the NFL draft is done. We're going to be talking about the Washington Commanders and Caps in the playoffs. So much more. It is a DC Sports Huddle. I'm Dave Jocelyn, Rob Woodfork, Dave Preston, George Wallace. Thanks as always for the time you spent with us. We are sponsored by MGM National Harbor for the latest in Washington sports. Visit MGM National Harbor and experience a sports fan's paradise. Again, sponsored by MGM National Harbor for the latest in Washington sports. Visit MGM National Harbor and experience a sports fan's paradise. All right, Commanders, they got back the picks. Basically, they traded to get Carson Wentz. I think they also fulfilled a lot of needs, and they get some players that they expect, at least as Ron Rivera said, in the top 4 picks that will come in, and he expects them to make a difference in their first season. So I'm pleased with the draft. Rob Woodfork, we'll start with you.
I give it a enthusiastic thumbs sideways because I don't necessarily hate the players that they took. Jahan Dotson, nice player. He sounds like he's going to be a good fit here. I like a lot of the players that they got. It's just where they got them. Because, I mean, who are the guys that we were talking about at 11? We were talking about Kyle Hamilton. We were talking about Chris Olave. We were talking about Jamison Williams. All of those guys were on the board at 11. And then you trade back, and then you get a guy who was legitimately stunned to have been selected at 16. He thought he was going to be a second-round pick. And then your second-round pick thought he was going to be a third or a fourth-round pick. So, you know, I'm trying not to read too much into that in and of itself, but it just really reeked of desperation, some of those picks that they made. It felt like there were better fits and better players that were available specifically with those first and second round picks. I linked to it in my column on WTOP.com. There were 3 guys who were really good, including the kid from Montana State, who my brother borderline scouted because he's a Montana State alum, and they never send guys to the NFL. So, Washington had some better picks there, but just like, hey, look, like Martin Mayhew said, right? Everybody, they know better what they need in that building than we do on the outside. So,
well, that's
but his job's on the line, not mine.
Right. But no, and that's exactly why I don't want to say you just blindly trust what they're doing, but
right.
Very much their job is on the line. And I'll say this, and I remember you had said last week, Chris Olave is a receiver. You're going to take a receiver at that position, unless I'm misquoting you.
Right.
Take him. He would have been available. They could have had him for whatever reason. Dotson was their guy. And so it is about fit and opportunity. We can say, well, he's too small or this or that, but this is the thesis I put out there. We've all been down the road before when the coach makes a pick or the team makes a pick that really the owner wanted and not the coach, and we know how that works out. So these
thing, I've heard that there was not a consensus on some of those picks. So you hate to hear that because it means that a lot of the dysfunction that has existed in that building for decades continues to be an issue, even though, you love Ron Rivera, you love a Martin Mayhew, those guys, those are respected names in the NFL. But, if you're still existing within a plane of dysfunction, then, that.
Although I'll say this, I've seen, you're not always going to get good consensus on draft picks, especially when you pick as low as 11. I say as low as 11, that's still pretty high. All right, George, jump in here, and then we'll go to Dave.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's with the draft thing. I love the draft grades. Nobody has any idea, right? That's just my favorite part. But look,
people love it,
huh?
People love it though.
I know. Okay, that's fine. People can love it. That's fine. But look, I think it's
they also love the Kardashians. So
you make a solid point. You make a solid point.
Wait, you mean you don't? All right. Okay, so. The receivers, okay, they needed the extra picks. Okay, they got him. They could have had Hamilton, which I think everybody on this board, our draft board, would have taken him first, and he goes to the Ravens. That's going to be fun to watch. Dotson, I think, is going to play right away in the slot. You get Robinson out of Alabama to replace with Peyton Barber, who's going to play. Mathis also is going to play. He's going to replace Matt Ioannidis. You see that these guys went out, and it seems like getting players that are ready to play. Now, whether that means how they're going to play, we don't know, but it seems that they could come in and are going to need to contribute. I have no problem with the Sam Howell pick either, a guy that had talked about going top 3, top 4, a year ago, and then he lost a lot of those weapons at Carolina. His numbers were great his sophomore and junior year. And I think it's interesting that the way Mayhew said they saw him at Carolina's pro day a couple years ago throwing to receivers so they would have some familiarity. De'Ami Brown, one of them, who's drafted by Washington. So you get a guy like Howell, and like Mayhew said, a lot of guys wouldn't go out there and volunteer their time to do that and throw on a pro day when they're not coming out. So they kind of like that about him, and they got to see him. So maybe that is a positive. They are very high on this guy, and to hear them say when he fell to them in the round, they had to jump on him. I have no problem with that. So, again,
that was the only one that didn't feel like a reach, though.
Yeah, agreed.
Everybody else felt like a reach.
And there's no pressure on Howell coming in right now. I mean,
right, exactly.
There's none whatsoever. You've got Wentz and you got Heineke, and then who knows? He can come in and just play and just learn. And then when he's ready to go, he'll go. The Carson Wentz things, look, they want him to be the future, and that's fine. But look, this is his third team in however many years. He's got the issues. He pouted when they drafted Jalen Hurts. It's a different situation. But Ron Rivera kept him in the loop and gave him a heads up that they're going to draft Howell. He didn't have to do that. So you already know you're dealing with maybe a delicate Carson Wentz. And if it doesn't work, it goes sideways this year, they could cut the cord after 1 year. So I have no problem with it. I mean, look, they filled some needs, and we have no idea about a lot of these guys, but they're going to be expecting them to play. Because if we have said multiple times on this here very lovely program that we have, this is year 3, guys. They need to win. They need to win, or we're doing it all over again.
That's the thing, that desperation, and this is what I said in my column, is that the desperation, you could feel it in the picks, because like you said, they picked a bunch of guys who can play week 1, year 1, and not necessarily guys who are going to be stars for you in year 2 or 3. We saw RG3. We lived through that soap opera. He was a legitimate star in year 1, and then he fell off the face of the earth, and we categorized that, rightfully so, as a bust now. And there were guys like, and maybe this isn't the best example, but a Patrick Mahomes didn't play at all his rookie year. Comes out his second year, nobody knew that dude was going to be lights out, and he throws for 50 touchdowns. So it's like you don't necessarily draft a guy because he can hit the ground running right away. You draft a guy because you're going to develop him into being the kind of guy that you can build your team around. I don't really see that in any of these picks. And I could be wrong on that. Our caveat, and we have to say this every year, we don't really know anything about these guys until 2-3 years down the line. This could be the best draft they ever had. We could be putting this up against the 1981 draft someday. But
having said that, though, they don't want to be 7 and 9 again, and so that's part of. So and regardless of whether it's about their jobs or whatever, there's also a culture, a psyche you want to continue. So you want to keep treading water. Given the counter argument, why you get some guys that can make a contribution now, because they do, as we discussed, some players left. George mentioned Matt, so on and so forth. You have needs you need to fill. By the way, whatever George is saying today, George, you in a doctor's office, that chair is so imposing. And I feel like I'm getting doctor's advice from you. So no matter what you say today, you're going to win it all. Dave Preston, your chair.
I think the biggest question is, are there highlights magazines, or are you reading in the office? Because both are just equally as important.
I'll be right with you. Just 1 minute.
Exactly. Yes. Now, as we've mentioned, this is a draft where guys might have a lower ceiling, but with a higher floor. So these are guys who can play this year. You can plug and play them a lot easier than have them being projects. I think if this is year 2, they don't make these selections. If this is year 1, they might not make these selections. But this is year 3 coming up for head coach Ron Rivera. They did win the NFC East, albeit with a 7-9 record his first season. They went 7-10 last year. This is a team that has not had a winning record in some time. And it's almost to the point where, yes, they're the ownership. It's a new world in Ashburn, and they have faith in the current regime. There's a front office that everybody digs, and these are the Commanders, and they're doing the right things the right way and moving forward and doing that. But you got to win in this business. And a third straight losing record is not ideal if you're a coach looking for job security. So they needed to get guys like Dotson, who, as George mentioned, can play in the slot from day one. Mathis is a kid who can fit into that defensive line rotation from day one. Brian Robinson Jr. is a guy who can spell Antonio Gibson, a guy who had a better college career than Gibson, even though Gibson might have the upside. Robinson's a guy who averaged 5 yards a carry, playing in the SEC, rushed for over 1,000 yards, also was able to contribute in the passing game. I think had almost 3 receptions per contest. So here's a guy who can potentially play on day one. I also liked, as we mentioned last week, getting quality from quantity, more draft picks, more guys they needed to take this year need to make the 53-man roster. Yes, they're going to get some free agents. They're going to get some undrafted guys, but they needed to get some guys who can fit into the 2 deep, guys who can play on special teams. Maybe Christian Holmes finds his, role as on either kick coverage or kick returns or something like that. So there will be places for these guys on this year's roster. I think we've talked in the past about how this team, instead of hitting a home run, has been hitting singles and doubles. I think this is the classic singles and doubles draft where I don't see any of these guys exiting the park, but I see each of these guys potentially getting on base.
Well, all right, let's go around and get our final point on the Commanders draft. And I'll just start with, and I think Rob made a great point, and we all agree that it's Martin Mayhew, Ron Rivera's job. And one thing that sold me on the Dotson pick, because I'm not going to claim here that I've watched a lot of Dotson tape and video. So, but he made the point, they made the point about part of what sold them on Dotson was who he was playing with, not against, but with. Obviously, you're playing the Big Ten. That's a good conference. But the theme was that he made the quarterback for Penn State better. Opposing defenses, he was a focal point. It's not like Ohio State has 6 other wide receivers, or I'm exaggerating, but the point being, he succeeded, even though he was the focal point. He made his quarterback better, and I think it's where like 10 of his 21 career touchdowns are for over 40 yards, so or 40 yards or somewhere in there. So he's a big threat because they've decided we're going to win with Carson Wentz. So he does need weapons around him.
And Dave, if I may interject, I actually saw him carve up the Maryland secondary last November. He catches 242 yards, 3 touchdowns. He was the difference in that game. Now, granted, Maryland is in the Big Ten, one of the softer defenses in that conference, but he was the best option. He was the best player on the field that day. You need guys on your roster who can be the best player on the field. And Dotson was that guy that day. You talk about all the touchdowns he had that were 21 yards or more. It felt like every one of his touchdowns came that afternoon, even though he only scored 3 of them.
All right. And while we got you, your final point on the Commanders draft?
I think I'm going to think it's a decent draft until proven otherwise. We won't know until 2 or 3 years down the road. This is a draft that if things don't turn well this year or next, you're going to see it's going to be an unfortunate draft where there may be a coaching change, 2 years from now, and some of these guys won't get the chance to fully develop. So, but I think it's a crew that can. We will see just about every one of these guys play on Sunday this fall, and if not, it'll be a failure.
Bob Woodfork.
If I have to give it a letter grade, I give it a C. Again, I like the guys that they got for the most part. Just I don't like where they took them, and especially the trade back. You need to get more in return for that first round pick than what they got. At least 1 or 2 trade charts that Washington came up short in that trade from what they got back standpoint. So I'm going to say they got a C on that with the potential to be better as pan out.
And read Rob's piece at WTOP.com. He worked too hard on it because he hasn't shaven in 3 days, so that's good. Well, you got to go to WTOP.
3 o'clock in the morning, y'all. At least give me a click.
That's right. Give him a click. Give him a click. All right, Dr. Wallace, I need to defer to you in that royal.
For the record, I haven't shaved in a month, and it still isn't coming in. So
Peach Fuzz over there.
Look, it's a different approach this year than we've seen in a long time. These guys are you better hope that come July and August that a lot of these guys haven't been cut from the final 53. That's what you're going to say about it. I mean, they pick guys that have been captains on their team. They pick guys that are supposedly ready to play, and they have to do that. They have to plug holes through the draft. They didn't do much in free agency, and that was well documented because of the money they spent on Carson Wentz. So they had to go out and do that now. You also, but keep in mind too, the Mathis deal too. Not only Ioannidis, but you're not extending Deron Payne. So he's probably done after this year. So you have to start looking at holes there. And we'll see if this approach worked. We have no idea. I like the fact that they got guys from solid programs that are used to winning. And because they're certainly not used to winning here, and you've heard Jonathan Allen and guys like that, the Alabama guys, they get very frustrated with this. So you get guys from winning programs that are used to winning, and hopefully that can translate to this level.
That is an important fact. All right, speaking of not shaving, let's go to the Capitals in the playoffs, because it's playoff hockey in the NHL. And I know the Florida Panthers are almost 30 years old as a franchise, and I know the Tampa Bay Lightning are the two-time defending champions, but I still can't wrap my head around hockey, Florida, and let's get fired up. But these are Florida Panthers, the best team in the league, we're told, by the record, and the Tampa Bay Lightning, the two-time defending champions. I'll just start with the miss of the Capitals' success. We're not going to ride it on goaltenders, because the regular season buzzer sounded, and Vitek Vanacek and Ilya Samsonov, neither one of them took control of that. I think Vanacek will be the starter for game one. But the whole playoffs, because the scoring will go down, it'll be how often, one goal overtime margins. It'll be if the Connor Sherrys, the Marcus Johanssons, the Anthony Manthas, if they step up and they come up with big goals, that's going to make a difference for the Capitals. Yes, Ovechkin, yes, Backstrom, all those guys can score, but suddenly in the playoffs, there's just not as much room on the ice, and that's why you need other scores. Go to you, George Wallace, because you're looking like you're pontificating now. I love that chair. It's going to be available on eBay at the end of our show.
Masterpiece Theater.
Right? Yes, Dr. Wallace, go ahead.
This is my new home studio. I have no idea what to expect from this Caps team. We've seen all different kind of things with this Caps team this year, and if they play good hockey, which we've seen the last month or so in good stretches, then I think they have a chance of being the top seed. I mean, they've been in the second wild card since January. They really haven't budged since that spot. I mean, so, they've had chances to move up, and then Ovechkin gets hurt this last week, and they've kind of hit a dud the last few games here. So hopefully they can turn around getting into the playoffs. I know coaches, Peter Laviolette, saying that likes to see some of the things that they have been doing translate into the playoffs. So they are playing some decent, solid hockey. We'll have to wait and see. But as Dave mentioned, playoffs come down to goaltending. We saw it during their Stanley Cup run. And if they don't have it, especially against a team like Florida, it could be an early exit. If you catch fire, catch lightning in a bottle, however you want to put it, then maybe they got a chance for an upset here. Look, as far as when you've got a Backstrom and an Ovechkin on team, as far as I'm concerned, you got a chance in a series, right? I mean, that's just a given. So, and this team, this group, we talk about it every year, this core group, well, they've been there. They know how to get it done. Yes, we've seen the early playoff exits, but let's keep in mind too, they have won a cup. They know how to get it done when it comes crunch time.
But also, keep in mind, playoff exits have come when they are in the Florida
top spot.
They've won President's Cup and all this other stuff, and then they go and then they flame out in the playoffs. Maybe this is the approach for them. Maybe they come in as the underdog and they rise up and knock off a Goliath that has all of the pressure on them. And like you said, you got an Alex Ovechkin, and I'm with Dave. Like, the role players are going to have to step up, but the guy who's going to inspire them is Alex Ovechkin. He was banged up. He didn't play the last few games of the regular season. He comes out there, he scores a couple of goals. That's going to set some of these other young guys on fire, and maybe they rally up and play out of their minds. And maybe one of these goaltenders really separates himself and ends up being good. So I'm actually picking, and I know we haven't hit this portion yet, but I'm going to say Caps in 7, because I just because a lot of people aren't picking them, I think this is their opportunity to be the underdog who advances deep into the playoffs.
Before we get to you, Dave Preston, something I said 13 years ago, whenever the Ovechkin contract was signed, it was my belief that we would win multiple Stanley Cups with Alex Ovechkin, not because I'm a level 2 youth hockey coach, which, by the way, I am, but because he is a once-in-a-generation player. And look what those kind of players have done. Wayne Gretzky, Mario Lemieux, they've won multiple Stanley Cups. Alex Ovechkin is not. I'm not going to go as far as to say if he doesn't, that'll impact his legacy. But I really believe that a player as great as he is, there should be another cup assigned to his name. Maybe it will be this year. We'll see. Dave?
Well, and I think what's different with hockey as opposed to other sports is it really does take, especially in 2022, where your best player on the ice, unless he's your goaltender, is getting off the ice every 35 seconds. So I think, as we've already mentioned, secondary scoring is going to be pivotal. The Connor Sherrys need to step up. Tom Wilson, even though he's having a career best in goals and assists, I think he could have a magical May if this team wants to get past Florida. The Panthers, aren't only just the best team in hockey this year, they're not just the highest scoring team in hockey this year. They're the first team to average over 4 goals per game in 26 years, I believe, since the Pittsburgh Penguins back in the mid-1990s. So this is a team that can score like nothing else. Cause for concern if you're the Capitals. Goaltending has been soft, no matter how good Nick Jensen and Dmitry Orlov are and John Carlson are as far as preventing traffic up front. Your goaltender needs to be solid. And we've seen either guy, whether it's Vanacek or Samsonov, fall flat on their face early and often this season. That's a concern. But cause for confidence, Alex Ovechkin, Evgeny Kuznetsov has had a great season as well. I see this series going maybe 5 or 6 games, but I don't think the Caps have the firepower to keep pace with the Panthers, and I just don't see the goaltending holding up over a long series.
Okay, so Rob's got Caps in 6. You've got the Panthers, George.
7, but yeah, 6. Yeah,
6, 7. Yeah.
I'm going. I'm flipping it. I'm going with the Caps too. They're going to pull the upset because nobody expects them to. How about Preston?
Hey, Louis. Hey, it's Louis from Landover. Welcome.
Well, no, and I'm going to go with the Caps in 7, and I'm going to base that again on what I said 13 years ago. I still believe Alex Ovechkin should have multiple Stanley Cups, and why not this year? And so I'm going to go with that. I'm going to say Caps in 7. Dave Preston's got all the intelligence.
I'm the bad guy.
Yeah. No, you're not the bad guy.
No, you're going to want it. You're going to be right. You're the one that's going to be right.
You're the smart guy.
But Billy from Boston knows.
I've got to go with what I'm running out of time with Ovechkin. Maybe he will play with 40, but I said he's going to win multiple cups more than a decade ago. So I'm gonna stand by that. Dave,
also, he needs a second cup if for no other reason it shuts up everybody in Pittsburgh trying to get Sidney
correct
into this conversation.
Oh, and let's be honest, you want to see them win a second cup so they can go parade through DC like the first time. Because that's really the what we need.
Gentlemen, before I depart, got to audible at the line of scrimmage. Saturday, what an incredible day of sports we have on the plate this Saturday. We start off with the Caps hosting Florida at 1. Then, of course, we have the Kentucky Derby as the first of 3 crown races. We wrap up at night. I believe Josiah Gray is starting for the Nationals against the Los Angeles Angels. They've got a lot of star power, including Anthony Rendon, who's actually not hurt at this time. And I'm going to be wearing the fedora with the Madras jacket at Gold Cup.
There it is.
Okay. All right. George,
there it is.
Anything else?
No, I can't top that. I'm not wearing a hat. No, I'm not going to the bus cap.
No, Rob, wearing a red suit or anything.
Right. Hey, but quick shout out to the Mystics. They start their regular season Friday, May 6th. Mike Thibault, appreciate him. Not only do we have Elena Deladon, but we have one of the best coaches in women's basketball history coaching our team here, and that's why we're
the best quotes from any coach in this region. He is selfishly for our purposes.
Yeah, he's great.
Well,
you can just let him go, and then you have to cut his out.
Well, he goes back to the Lakers with Magic and his breadth of experience, and even as I talked about, I did a feature story in the 80s when he was coaching Calgary in a league that was for players 6'5" and under when they tried a small basketball league. So I'll bore you with that story next week.
The NBA is now, so
it goes in cycles. We're sponsored by MGM National Harbor. For the latest in Washington sports, visit MGM National Harbor. Experience a sports fans' paradise. With all this stuff going on, even Dave's fedora and George's chair, I think we have that. We'll see you next week.
Break.